afternoon, Muskegon. How you doing? My name is Gregory T. Roberts. Welcome to Torn Into, your show for news, information, and more for this 9th, I believe. Yes, June 9, 2023. The temperature's outside, 73 degrees. Look, this weekend and Monday and Tuesday, chances of rain and lower temperatures slowly warming up for the Juneteenth celebration. Want to talk a little bit about that next week, Juneteenth. Hopefully, we'll be live. We're looking for a location. Maybe you have a location near or on the site that has good internet, because we have to be connected to the internet. Okay, let me get my co-partner in here, Pastor Melvin C. Burns II. How you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm good, my brother. How are you doing?
Good, man. I tell you what, a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
And so much to talk about, but let me give a disclaimer on this, because we like to look at and review all the facts on a subject before we go into a subject.
Yes.
But this one's hot off the presses. A man is innocent until they're proven guilty.
True.
It just so happened that God blessed us that we would have the right man for this season to be on this weekend. He's just amazing. So, listen. So, what we're going to talk about? Well, we have to talk about the indictment, the count indictment of former President Donald J. Trump. 7 counts and many more. And looking at the news, there are more. And so, with that said, let's get somebody that's a little smarter than me to talk about this. In my eyes, this man is brilliant, he's smart, and he will always be chief judge. Put your hands together for the Honorable Gregory Chief Judge Gregory C. Pittman. How you doing, sir?
My brother, listen, I'm waiting for the person that's smarter than us to show up, man. I'm waiting to hear what he's got to say or she's got to say. You know,
yeah, that should be interesting.
Yeah, listen, you're a fan favorite of this show. Thank you so much for coming on. You've always supported us, brother.
Thank you for the invitation, man. It's good to see you, Greg. Good to see you, Pastor.
Good to see you as well.
Good brothers, man. Glad to see y'all, man. Hope your summer's going well so far.
So far, good. Very busy. And may I tell you this, Judge, you have a fine first name, that Gregory.
Oh, boy.
Right on.
All right. Listen, Judge, we got a lot to talk about, and a man is innocent until proven guilty. We have a court system that's supposed to be blind, but the former president, 45, Donald J. Trump, indictments set by a special prosecutor and a grand jury, and it came out today. And earlier this morning, in following news and stuff like that, it was 7 counts, and nothing was unsealed. Now we're seeing that it's sealed, and it's up to 38 counts. Hold on, just before I go there, my sister in Ohio said, and he has a beautiful wife who is my friend. And boy, you fraternity and sorority people stick together, boy. Thank you, sis.
Those deltas, man, they are everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yes, sir. That's sweet of it. Thank you.
Can we break this down? How this works?
All right. So I think like the first thing you said, and this is us just, we're barbershopping now. We're just sitting in the barbershop.
Right.
Just having that conversation. this is, like you said, this is hot off the press. I mean, literally, this morning was the the opening for public consumption. I'd imagine President Trump and his folks probably got wind of this 2-3 days ago. The original I heard was a 7-count indictment regarding essentially his failure to properly handle classified documents pursuant to federal law. Right? That's what I get. That's my understanding. My understanding is that an indictment was handed down through the work of the special counsel.
Yes.
Was appointed by the United States Attorney General, Merrick Garland. I think his name is Jack Smith, I think.
Yes, Mr. Smith.
And they presented over months to this specially convened grand jury, which is one of the at least 2 acknowledged ways that a person is in this country charged with a criminal offense. One is by indictment. The other is by what we use here in the state of Michigan, which is called the complaint, information and complaint.
Now, can you explain the grand jury so people understand that?
Yeah, the grand jury system is people are literally regular citizens are called to jury duty in a certain jurisdiction. Under those circumstances, I think that grand jury has to be authorized by a judge, just like a judge would sign a search warrant or an arrest warrant. You have to go before that judge and explain why you want that grand jury, purposes of that grand jury, and they issue the order that the grand jury can convene. Then people are selected, just like you're selected for jury duty here in Muskegon County, off of a acknowledged list, whether it's voter registration, whether it's driver's license, however that particular jurisdiction handles selecting jury members. They are then brought in, and in a grand jury situation, why they call it a grand jury versus another, they are brought in literally and will serve for a very extended period of time. These grand jurors are brought in and selected and told right at the beginning that you are part of this grand jury and you will be called in to hear evidence and make decisions over possibly the next 12 to 18 months. The part of the order would allow that it will show how much time they think they would need for this grand jury to be convened. So then the process kind of moves from there, and I'm painting big broad strokes here. The process from there would move to these grand jurors being sworn in as jurors, and from time to time they would be brought in by special counsel's office, and we need to have you sit for the next 2 days to hear evidence that we want to present about the cases that we are attempting to put together. Now, that grand jury does not make decisions from day to day. They may be called in on, let's say that they got 7 witnesses they want to bring before them over the course of 2 days, based upon the availability of witnesses, scheduling, that kind of thing. They'll sit for those 2 days, take those notes, hear the information, and leave. And come back when they're scheduled to come back again. At some point, that special counsel completes the presentation of their evidence to the grand jury, then makes their argument to them that they want them to find a cause of action.
Okay.
What they call it is a true bill. We want you to return a true bill of indictment as to these particular charges that we believe are appropriate.
Okay.
Now, here's one very important aspect of that grand jury's situation. The target of the grand jury or the prospective defendant or whomever does not have necessarily the right to cross-examine or question any of those witnesses. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They can have legal counsel present to hear what is being said.
Okay.
But they do not have that constitutional right that we recognize in a jury trial to the confrontation of witnesses, i.e., the ability to cross-examine or question them based on what the witnesses testify to.
Okay.
So essentially, that prosecutor's kind of got the whole. He's got the whole field. He's broken field running. He can put on everything that he wants to put on, and there really is no challenge to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. I thought somebody was about to ask.
Well,
okay. Let me go do this for Neftiti. Why do you think it took so long to indict him when he could be in jail? We'll get to that in a second. Okay. All right. So
my elder sister is not even playing. She's
shit.
When does he go to jail?
Yeah, when do you go to jail? Okay, so my question is that these are people because they're trying to throw a spin on it. First of all, they said that Smith, at first they were saying he's a fair, honest, hardworking, good person. Both sides said that he was the right person. Two, people are arguing that this is a political, because if you look at Pence, case was different versus our current president. And so but no, you're talking about this is a grand jury, people of the peers, hearing information and making a decision of indictment. Am I correct?
That is absolutely correct. So, what you're hearing, of course, is the posturing, the attempt to win the case in the court of public opinion, the whataboutism that we live in these days, that attempts to analogize one situation, i.e., Michael Pence or Joe Biden, who was found with who had some classified documents in his possession, versus why are they doing this to me? And the short answer is, in my opinion, and I imagine you guys would say the exact same thing, is it's a case by case by case by case by case approach.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no such thing as an analogous situation from one potential circumstance to the next. We all have to stand or fall on our own when we're called to the bar of justice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And what is happening here may have some levels of parallels with anybody else. But man, in 25 years on the bench, in 32 years of practice of the law, every case is different.
Okay.
Well, if you look at, they found documents in former President Jimmy Carter, they found in Vice President Pence, they found in President Biden. The difference in all those people, they turned those. Oh, we found these documents. They turned them over. And then
what have we heard since Watergate? It's not necessarily the crime.
It's the cover-up.
It's the cover-up.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That gets you jammed up.
Yes.
See, one of the tenets of our criminal law in this country, whether it's a state case or whether it's a federal case, and this is a federal case, is the issue of your intent. See, you can make a mistake, you can make a mistake that on its face looks like a crime.
Mm-hmm.
But in just about, I would say probably 95% of criminal charges, regardless of what level, one of the issues that has to be proven is you had the intent to do the wrongful act and know that it was a wrongful act.
Okay.
So what you're talking about with these other folks, when it was brought to their attention, hey man, you got some classified documents that should not be in your possession.
Mm-hmm.
Their intent to that was exhibited in the idea of thank you for making me aware. Let's work out how we get these returned, because
Right.
it's not my intention to wrongfully take possession of and maintain these documents.
Right.
And they turn around, they hand them to them, and the prosecuting authorities say, hey, we don't think that there was really any intent here to do anything criminal, so we're not pursuing criminal charges. And here's what I think, we don't know it exactly, but here's what I think we can all assume, that when it was discovered in whatever way that President Trump had these documents, the appropriate authorities reached out to him, made him aware, and probably made provision for the return of those documents.
Yeah.
And of course, our guy just cannot find it within himself to not feel like he's above, and his behavior should not be called into question, and did not take, I think, appropriate steps to return those documents.
Well, not only you take that, but they said, okay, documents at Mar-a-Lago, but they have a recording at him at a different place now, shuffling papers that they can't find, talking about that he wanted to invade Iran. So now you got another place that documents and a room full of people. Like you say, we're barbershopping it, right? So he's barbershopping it with a people that are not allowed to hear and see these documents. And by the way, you might want to explain to the people that there is a way to handle documents that come from the White House that are given to people. You have to go through clearances and stuff like that. And only certain eyes are supposed to see certain things, and those things are supposed to be seen in certain rooms and all that kind of stuff in total secrecy, and they're not supposed to leave, like the White House, for instance.
Well, so your points are right on target. You've moved a little further down the road from where we are, because what you're discussing now is levels of evidence that will be produced either in front of that grand jury, possibly they presented that, but definitely in the prosecution of the case now that it has actually been voted a true bill of indictment regarding recordings and statements and behavior with those documents. So let's stay on the point here for a second.
Mm-hmm.
That the information has been presented to the grand jury. The grand jury comes together and deliberates. That grand jury can ask questions of not only the witness, but they can ask questions of the prosecutor, which is a little different than what you normally see in a regular jury trial kind of a situation.
Mm-hmm.
They can literally ask. Matter of fact, the prosecutor has to sort of leave time and make available the opportunity for them to ask questions. So they're sitting there with their pen and paper, taking notes. At the appropriate time in that grand jury process, that prosecutor will say, are there questions? And these folks will ask their questions to help them to be able to understand and clarify. the evidence that they've heard. That's part of that grand jury process. That's an important part of that grand jury process. When they are finally finished asking their questions, when the prosecutor has finished presenting their evidence, then they go into private deliberations. And at some point, they return a document, this true bill of indictment, indicating what they believe has been proven. The burden of proof in a grand jury situation is the lowest burden of proof in our system. There are 3 levels of proof that all cases are subjected to, whether criminal or even civil. The lowest standard is proof by a preponderance of the evidence. The mid-level standard is proof by a clear and convincing standard. The highest level, which is attached to criminal cases only, is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay?
Okay.
So that grand jury is operating with the understanding, the instruction that when you deliberate, if you believe by a preponderance of the evidence that you've heard that we have shown that a crime has been committed, or it is possible that a crime has been committed, and B, it is possible that Donald J. Trump is the person who committed that crime, you must return a true bill of indictment against him on those charges that you believe we've met that standard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's what they've done. They've come back with, and like you guys are saying, we're getting it hot here. So
Yeah.
we've heard first that there was a 7-count indictment. Then we've seen some articles that talk about 38 counts of indictment, but it adds the word associates. That's what I just saw, Trump and associates facing 38-count indictment. So I don't know if that's in total. So we're not going to speculate on that.
Right. We're not going to speculate. Yeah.
We do know that 45 is facing at least 7 counts himself directly.
And that information was released by him at first and then picked up by other news services.
He plays by a little different set of rules, and it's actually been very effective for him.
Yes.
He gets out in front of what institutions like our courts have to recognize in how things are introduced to the public. See, there's some standards that we have to follow, that Jack Smith's got to follow, that that grand jury that's been convened in, I would imagine that's Washington, D.C., has to follow in how they present and produce this information. He gets to just jump on his soapbox and start trying to immediately turn things in his favor. So he came out with, hey, they just indicted me. Nothing like this ever been done before. And how do you treat a president this way? And what about Biden? And what about, all of that? Jack Smith has to follow the rules of procedure. So his actual true indictment doesn't come out until a little later.
Which the former president started last night.
Yeah.
With that. And then it was going to be that it's going to be open Tuesday. But I think, I don't know if they just said enough, let's bring this out and let's open it up. Yeah. Talk about that process.
Well, I would imagine in the special counsel's office, after President Trump took the step he took to begin to publicize this, I think they probably already had a contingency in place that if he sits on it, we'll sit on it until Tuesday. If he goes public, then we are going to respond in time with the unsealing of the indictment, so that there are both, perspectives presented, and it can be talked about the way they want to talk about it, and those who want to comment from this standpoint can comment as well. So I would imagine they weren't taken off guard. And I
Mm-hmm.
would imagine
Yeah.
that they had, plan A, plan B, and plan C in place for how they wanted to handle the rollout of this indictment.
Go ahead, Pastor Burns.
Um, Honorable, in terms of, I think to sort of merge or explain political versus the legal, somebody said earlier, while this whole process is going on, if Trump, or in this case Trump, is known to be the target of the investigation, he can have an attorney present during the grand jury, observing the entire process. And so it's likely, you and I sit there and hear somebody present evidence against us, and somebody go, "Ooh, this is not going real well." They probably, so the idea that people have some time that this presented is there's this secret process going on, but I think they're going to indict me. It doesn't work that way.
No, as a matter of fact, Pastor, what I would expect is every step along the way, uh, the president and his legal counsel have been made aware of what we're doing,
Yes.
and have been made and have been and the special counsel's office has been accessible
Mm-hmm.
by the defense attorneys for Trump to meet with them virtually anytime that they would ask for that meeting.
Okay.
You may have recalled hearing at some points here in the near past that they did have a couple of meetings
Yes.
to talk about these things. Well, part of what people don't appreciate necessarily, who are not in this business on a day-to-day basis, is that legal processes are not about gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Legal processes are about, there's a term that's used called discovery.
Yes.
And legal processes are about, we need to make as much as we know about what we know
Mm-hmm.
available to you, because your due process right allows you to know what we know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to
Okay.
defend yourself, you have the right to know what we know.
Right.
Okay.
Matter of fact, we have a responsibility by statute and by constitutional decision making that the prosecution in a case has to turn over to you
Mm-hmm.
the things that we're using against you. And as important,
Mm-hmm.
if we run across during the course of the investigation, I say we as prosecution, I'm not
Yes.
really a we anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But if the prosecution finds what's called exculpatory evidence, or evidence that helps your case,
Okay.
there is a absolute duty immediately upon discovering that exculpatory evidence to turn that over to the defense.
Okay.
See, in our country, theoretically, those who are prosecuting cannot withhold any information that is material and relevant to how they're going forward in that
Okay.
prosecution.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what I would imagine. Don't know this to be a fact. I imagine that Trump's attorneys did not attend one day
Mm.
of this grand jury testimony
Okay.
because they already have witness lists,
Okay.
offers of proof as to what it is that we intend to elicit by testimony from that particular witness,
Mm-hmm.
exhibits as much as they have them available. And if they found anything that helps Donald Trump, they've included that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you a question, Judge. The average person, Joe Blow, is sitting up saying this has nothing to do with me, but yes, it has everything to do with you, because no person is above the law. None should be above the law, and everybody has the right to a fair hearing,
Mm-hmm.
and you should be interested in how this happens.
You absolutely should. Here's a little bit of the, I would say, the caveat, the caution. Absolutely no citizen of this country, or no perpetrator of an act in this country, because you can be charged and not be a citizen, is above the law per se. But there are certain responsibilities and activities at levels that call for some level of protection as to your ability to act because of the nature and the difficulty, if you will, of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you hear a lot of situations where presidential behavior or congressional behavior is kind of given a little latitude because these folks are in situations where they got to make decisions, they have to act, they have to do things that we would call into question and maybe not necessarily want to consider a criminal act because of the work that they are doing. Those are some of those things like what do they call it? Executive privilege.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing that, that presidents and others get to hide behind, or official immunity for certain types of behaviors that may be criminal in other spaces, but because of the nature of what has to be done in these levels, they might not necessarily fit within what that statute calls for. What I think is happening here, and I think what you guys appreciate is happening here, that this is just a flat out accusation of you have gone beyond the scope of your authority in how you have handled classified information. And there's a statute that he's being charged under that's directly on point. And that statute does not include limiting or exempting language for the president. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who in his corner who are trying to co-opt the argument that he shouldn't be treated this way because he's the president. But if they could, they would then support that with the exemplary or the exempting language of the statute that he's being charged under. All they're saying now is really, hey man, y'all shouldn't treat him that way because he's president.
Yeah, which brings us to, we got to go to the board. Going back to Ohio, says, can he still try and run for president with an indictment? Yes, he can.
Yes.
Seems like 2 impeachments would disqualify anyone from running again. No.
Yep. Yeah. Well, again, don't let common sense get in the way of of a good story here. That makes a lot of sense to us.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I was watching the other night this movie Chappaquiddick about the situation where Teddy Kennedy drove off that bridge and that young woman got killed. Right.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first things that he said, at least in the movie, after it was discovered that this all happened, was, "I'm running for president, but I don't think I'm going to ever become president." Because back in that day,
mm-hmm.
these types of behaviors were prohibited. If you got into this kind of trouble,
mm-hmm.
you can forget it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even put your name out there to run for president.
Yeah.
Well, we now live in a time when, you can be caught on Access Hollywood talking about what you're doing. Yep. You can hang with the porn star and brag about what you've done. You can claim I can shoot people in the middle of the street. Nobody's going to do anything to me. So it is not beyond the realm of possibility that he will announce and continue a run for president of the United States under federal indictment.
Let me put this out to you guys. What do you think, looking at the poll numbers today, and since the first indictment, now including with this indictment, his poll numbers are gone up, where people have agreed that this is a witch hunt. And matter of fact, the former president said that it's kind of strange that they released this now because Joe Biden took a bribe for $5 million. And I mean, the spin is getting, they're more spin than Steve Nash dishing assists here. So what do you think about that?
One of the things, people don't perceived timelines. And as we've been saying today, all of this Biden stuff is not just now coming to the surface. Well, this process, I mean, I forget how long ago this special prosecutor was appointed. And so this didn't just, these announcements happened in the same week, but they didn't start in the same time frame.
That's right.
But and if you aren't thinking and just repeating news stories you hear, well, they just did this because this just happened. Well, no, one started 9 months, a year ago, versus something that we're just hearing about that's not even to the point of a grand jury, not to the point of we may be in an investigative stage at most. So they're even in two different levels of the process.
That's right.
Yeah, and the other part
Excellent.
I probably add is, again, if we're paying attention, is that the president usually doesn't direct the FBI to whom they should investigate. Well, we prefer they did. Now, we know we've had cases and we've had FBI directors resign for exactly those type of things. But again, this process, I'm sure if Joe Biden had the authority, he would have told the FBI not to investigate him and his son.
That's right.
You see that it's at some point of an investigative phase.
That's right.
Because the DOJ, if there's something out there with the president or his son, they have to look at it.
Well, here's what excellent points, man. Here's what we learned during the Trump administration. We have always been a country that has been proud of and harped on the idea that our Constitution, affords a lot of protection and processes. But what we learned is the Constitution is only as effective and strong as the people who are in position to have the power regarding the Constitution.
Please say that again. Please say that again, because I don't think people understand that.
Yeah. The Constitution in and of itself is a pretty amazing document. It covers a lot of ground. But the effectiveness of that document is certainly impacted by who's got the levers of power with that document. And what you learned with President Trump is he didn't mind inserting himself into the Department of Justice. He did not mind stepping over lines of independence and authority as it relates to what you were talking about, Pastor Burns, with the FBI and the autonomy that they have normally been able to operate with, regardless of whether they have abused it or not, because they have.
They have.
No, they have.
Mm-hmm.
He has made it his business that if I don't like the advice that I get from legal counsel, which is supposed to be unbiased, simply based on what the facts are, I'll get rid of that legal counsel until I get one who will tell me what we want to be heard.
Yeah.
That puts that Constitution in jeopardy constantly. So listen, man, where were we able to sort of survive? We were able to basically sort of survive because we had a reasonably independent judiciary that continued to make decisions that says that your abuse of power, so to speak, in how you have blurred these lines cannot be justified when it's brought before the court.
Judge, we do interviews for candidates. We've done them with you and other people. I can tell you, without thinking of any individual, every judge we've ever interviewed, when you say what makes a good judge, you always hear this one statement above everything else: they follow the law.
Gotta follow the law.
I mean, hands down, every interview, when you ask, that's the thing they say: they follow the law. Now, for me, one of the things I'm always impressed by when I hear judges, when I hear prosecutors talk about even a case, they kind of go to this place of, and you get the sense of they do this for a living, that we're governed by something. And no matter what you think about a case, and when you talk about rules of evidence and those things, and political views aside, there's just certain things you get a sense of. You might see this on TV or Law and Order, but they don't happen because we all know we have to do this for this system to work.
That's right.
And when you kind of say that about the Constitution, whatever we think about it, it works because for over 200 years, everybody has said this is the way it works.
This is it.
And when it doesn't work, we can amend it. We can legally pressure to get it changed or change the interpretation laws, but we all agree that it works.
That's right.
It works. We don't like the guy got elected, but we live with it for the next 4 years. We
That's right.
vote people who are against him. We don't go burn the house down.
That's right.
Right.
We didn't used to.
We didn't used to.
Right.
When I hear former presidents talk, you get that same sense. And that's, I don't care, Bush, Trump, Carter in my lifetime. They always get this sense of, I back up a little bit because I'm one of the few people in the world that's had this perspective. And so I may have some political views, and I've seen, in my 60 years, I've seen every president sort of take this perspective. Some I like of, but you don't know what all that guy's got to look at. Yeah, I may not agree with this, but they may campaign for candidates, campaign for their political beliefs, but they always kind of come to the point of, but you don't know what all that guy has to deal with to make that decision.
That club is so small.
But their perspective, I listen to an ex-president interview, and it's interesting. And then we have one who just seems so different. So perspective so different of, what this means. We talk about these documents, and I'm going to go along, but everybody has a perspective of, I serve these people.
That's right.
They recognize, you know what? These people let me sit here for 4 or 8 years. Everything I did was for, whether people agreed or not. And you just get this different, and this is an analytical criticism to me of this perspective of of our former president is, it was me. Everything I did belongs to me. And so I don't care how many attorneys explain it to him. I think his mindset is still, I was president and everything there belonged to me.
That's right.
You can't take those documents, but they're mine.
That's right.
You can't do this, but I'm the president.
That's right.
And it was never, but I serve these people. It's almost, I almost sense like they serve me. The Justice Department serves me. The military serves me. The political party serves me. And I
think back for a second. Remember when there was, that summer and time of uprising where,
yes.
people were really expressing themselves.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to invoke the military.
Yep. Why can't we shoot him in the leg?
Or, hey, listen, Greg, even if they didn't shoot anybody, why can't I just order the military to go to wherever and keep the peace?
That's right.
And the Joint Chiefs of Staff, another group that has to say,
yes,
this is bigger than what I think,
mm-hmm.
had to stand up to him and say, we do not deploy our military against our people.
Yes. Again, you listen to stuff. The gentleman who watched him basically said, I was embarrassed to be walking with him when I saw the scene of what was going on. And so those are the, as a student of government, those are the things I look for in here, despite what people might think my views are. Going back to Nixon, whatever you thought of him, he sat back in perspective and said, I was a president of this country, and a president shouldn't go through what I'm about to go through based on all the things that they now know that I did. Whether you like him or not, he saw it from the perspective of, and he was a student of history as well, of, I don't want a president of the United States to have to go through this.
Man, you look at the surviving presidents, and you look at the level of respect. And these were people who were diametrically opposed to one another, ideologically, politically, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at the level of respect that they show to one another because they all know, man, don't nobody know what you are going through or what you've been through.
Or what you're getting ready to go through.
Except us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And in spite of what I might think of your politics and all of that kind of thing, I am never going to step out here and speak ill of you. Mm-hmm. Because only we really understand what's going on. Well, like you said, here's Trump, who's the outlier, who continues to criticize Obama, who continues to criticize George W. Bush,
Yes.
continues to criticize Clinton. All those guys get together and say, "Hey, man, I don't know what you was thinking about, but we all made it, and I don't have a bad word to say to anybody about you."
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a standard.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing because you say it's a standard, but it seems like all of a sudden people want to hear what tickles their ears because that bar and their standards have lowered because they're listening to what the person says. So if a person, for instance, says that this whole thing is a power struggle or witch hunt, it's totally believed.
And here's why people are susceptible to that. We have people now who have figured out, I think, cynically figured out, that I can get to Congress in my community because now there's enough folks in my community who I can convince that they're the bad guys. And they are now in positions of in the halls of Congress and being considered for senatorial positions and then running for president. You know, this guy in Florida, DeSantis.
Mm-hmm.
These are the cynical approaches
Mm-hmm.
to wanting to wield the leadership of our country.
Yeah.
But how many times, Greg, you know, Melvin, we're old enough now, you know,
Mm-hmm.
God, thank you. We're old enough now to remember that even when we heard our parents talking about that president or that whatever, you never heard in them the cynicism of the idea that I don't think that he really wants this country to do well.
Right.
They just didn't agree with how you were doing it.
Yes.
They didn't agree maybe with how it affected people that were close to us. All politics is local, right?
Yeah. Yes.
We are living in a time now, my brothers, where I seriously have to question from time to time when I hear people talk in these halls of power.
Mm-hmm.
Do you even want this country to continue to exist and advance and go forward? Remember, one of Trump's closest confidants talked about that would be oh my God, Banyan
Yes.
talked about the dismantling of the government.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't the only one.
Oh no,
Yeah, he wasn't the only one, and we have people in Congress right now saying that we should dismantle the country and go in different parts, quote unquote. And so that one of the things that I'm saying is that people don't understand, and what you said, Judge, is that that it's in the hands of the people, and if we don't do anything, then it's just going to fly by us. If I look at the example of we're getting ready to celebrate Juneteenth next week, and you said in the power, okay, it took how many years for it to get to Texas that people were free? Why? Because the power, when the hands delayed what was supposed to happen in Texas to let people know that they were free.
Sure. There are always people who are able to co-opt and gain some advantage by being oppressive to other people. That was that oppression. We know that they're free, but we ain't got to tell them because I still need, you know, I still need my back 40 tilled or whatever, you know, it served that purpose for them. Here's the danger that we're living in, my brothers. I am in my lifetime. I have not seen us more stratified, more separated.
Mm-hmm.
Divided. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
And there are people who are in leadership. You never heard your leaders talking about it's them, it's not you. You always heard. Now, never mind what might have been going on inside, conversations inside the room. But when they stood up and spoke to the masses, they talked about we're in this together.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You named the president. However you may have felt about their politics,
Mm-hmm.
I can show you them standing before the people saying, "This is our country. We're in this together."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We had a president from 2016 to 2020 who made it a part of his agenda going forward that we're not all in this together.
I remember running for office, and the thing is about what I had to do is talk to people and convince them what my itinerary was and what I would like to do for them. It wasn't to point at my person that I was running against and say that person's evil and they live on this street and their life is this. And if you don't agree with them, they're eating babies and you can go do something about it. But that's where we're at.
That's kind of where we're at. We are in a position where too many people have been turned against one another. And it's a scary and difficult road back from that, and it's worrisome that we'll ever get back to some level. I mean, we've never been, we've had the ability to live and coexist with one another, believing some certain basic foundational principles about the country we live in and who we are as Americans. And that's now being blown up by people who used to espouse those ideas. Richard Nixon has no place in this Republican Party today.
Yeah. Yes.
Think back to not that far back to maybe Governor John Engler.
Mm-hmm.
Governor Engler would have an incredibly difficult time being able to get to the governorship now.
Yeah.
As a Republican governor.
Mm-hmm.
I give you another thought. And I was thinking about this morning. I was, off a little bit, but the current Speaker of the House is having fits because where he was sitting, he said, I realize we can't let the government go in default. So I've got to make a deal, some kind of deal. Now he's catching heck. And I thought to myself, he's finding out what John Boehner found out.
Mm-hmm.
Why? What's the guy from Wisconsin?
Paul
Ryan.
Yeah. What even the last
Nancy?
No, not Nancy, but
even before.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But he found the last Republican speaker found out, which is this is unmanageable. The job isn't to say no to everything. The job is to sit here and negotiate and come up with something that moves our country forward. It's
That's right.
All the time.
Right.
And he, I mean, we know what he was about. What it took for him to get. When he got that seat, I said, this is going to be the worst speaker ever. Not because of his policies, but because of what it took to get it.
What he's got to deal with.
Yeah. And so he says, okay, well, our position can't be let the government default. That's bad for the economy. It's bad for our world standing. He sees that.
Yes.
So he says, I can't afford to just say, well, no, let the government shut down. He understands that. But he's ruling over majority private and says, let it happen. It'll do something to them. Not thinking, but what does it do to all of us?
Here's the other side of that dynamic, Pastor. We're starting to see the vestiges of that play out on the Democratic end
as well.
Spectrum as well.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And if I get into too much trouble, you saw them for some very popular issues feed on some Democratic leaders had been allies. And you
Yes.
saw, you saw some interest like Me Too movement feed on people who were typically allies.
Yeah.
And then some they found out the accusations weren't even true. And so when one of the most dangerous things in politics, and they should be, there's people who have one single special interest, but they shouldn't dominate a party.
No. Extremism on any end of the spectrum is a threat to good governance of the people.
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody says, man. And I have been a fierce independent as a if I got a political stance. I've been an independent since college. I have always said I vote my conscience as to who I think has convinced me that they serve the best interest of whatever the election is about. But the governance of people in this country has always been towards the center.
Right.
And I ain't saying nothing ground shaking or earth shattering, because this is where the majority of people are. They may be left center, they may be right center, but they are in the middle here, and they just want to be able to live peacefully.
Gerald Ford said this, and he said, the problem is we got too many people to the right and too many people to the left. And he says, we got to get people to come back to the center. We need people in the center to get things done. And that is not happening. As a matter of fact, it has gone to the point we're way too right and way too left. And what's happening, what this country is supposed about, this melting pot, is in, I dare say, is in the ICU.
we call it specialist.
We calling in the family.
Yeah. Yeah, they're calling in the family right now because okay, we got 2 minutes left. Judge, your last things on this, because it's so much to go to this.
Well, I would say this. I would say that stay tuned. There's going to be the trial in public court, the court of public opinion, and there's going to be the trial that takes place in our courts of law. We need to have the patience to allow the court of law to run its course, then form your opinion, as opposed to the opposite. Forming your opinion and then being disappointed, angry, whatever you are, when the court of law follows its rules to give him the opportunity to have his say. And we'll see where it goes.
Going back to Ohio, Sister Vicky. Great discussion. Thank you, Chief Judge Pittman, for sharing your legal experience and knowledge.
Thank you, my sister. Thank you, my soror.
So Judge Pittman, and we're gonna have you probably again, because they're going to Miami Tuesday to start this process. We're looking at possible indictments in Georgia.
I was about to say, his real difficulty is coming out of Georgia.
Yeah.
That's where he's going to have some difficulty, my man.
And, think about a Republican president getting indicted in Georgia on state charges.
Yes.
Nothing about that helps.
Nothing. And there is no pardon power at the state
levels. Well, listen, people, it's torn into Judge. Thank you. We will be we're going to be covering this all summer. And unfortunately, there's no rest for the wicked. I don't know.
Invite me back to the barbershop, man.
Yeah. You know what? I think that's what we're going to call it. We're going to have you come back to the barbershop.
Pippin in the barbershop. That's how
Man, I love seeing both of y'all, man. God bless you both.
All right. God bless you. And God bless everybody out there. Listen, it's the weekend. Go, like we say every week, sow a seed in somebody's life. You never know who you're going to have a chance to touch. Take care.